is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Nahaja Black. It is a beautiful day here in the 242. I hope that you are doing well, taking care of yourself, and living your best life today. Really excited. I'm going to be joined by one of my good friends, Dr. E. And the conversation today is going to be a very interesting one. I'm happy for you, but I'm jealous and envious too. How to identify the underlying issues, these underlying emotions that underpin envy and jealousy. That's what we're talking about today. Pretty excited to be bringing on my good friend, Dr. E. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Boy, this is a topic today, Dr. E. This is a topic today. I'm telling you.
And I think this came up because not only have I been having this conversation with clients recently, but a few weeks ago, a friend and I had this same conversation about the fact that, sometimes you look around at others and you're really, really genuinely happy for them, but you're like, but what about me? Like, when's my turn? And it's not like you want specifically what's theirs, but you just want to understand why you can't have it. And then nobody wants to have that awkward conversation, right?
Yeah.
That awkward conversation. So that's going to be a whole lot we're going to unpack today.
And it's so interesting because there is that awkward conversation. Is there that even a conversation we have? One of the things that I know, happens sometimes in friendship circles, women's circles, that let's say everybody in the 4, 5, 6, 7 of you in a group, and there's one person who's unfortunately struggling with getting pregnant, but everybody around them is getting pregnant. That's something that's a real life issue that happens where I'm happy for you. Right. But I'm envious. Yeah. Why not me? I'm happy for you. I think I really am. But because I've even heard of stories where people break, like friendships divide, like they just couldn't handle, seeing that person having so many kids and they're struggling to have their own. And then coming back years later and saying, hey, listen, I'm sorry, our friend, after they've had a child, they want to reconcile. I think it's just very interesting, these things that are happening. And I'm not talking about personal experience. It's just anybody saying, oh, no, should I you? But I know stories.
We have to be very clear because then people will be like, oh, you sound jealous. It's not jealousy. And this is why, and I think I'm going to start with breaking down the definition between envy and jealousy, because there are two different separate emotions and also how they show up differs. So for instance, envy means you're discontent, longing for someone else's advantages. So when I think about this idea of being envious, what you're looking at is you see somebody else having something and I want what you have. Is to sum it up. I want what you have. So you might see somebody's wealth. You might see somebody's status. They are parents. You just want what they have. That's what envy is, right? On the other hand, jealousy is literally a secondary emotion, right? Which usually involves a rival affection or a rival for attention for this thing. So when you're jealous, you're unpleasant, you're suspicious, you're even apprehensive. And so the difference is that while people use those words interchangeably, they mean two different things because most people actually act on jealousy. Versus envy is just that feeling, that longing for, like, I just want what you have. And a good example, when you can think about it, is there may be people who have access to more stuff than you do, right? So let's say you have a friend who has been awarded like a trust fund, right? And so the idea that you would want that, but it's not your friend's fault that they have it. But their disposition is going to be completely different than yours. By contrast, the fear of losing what you have, the resentment, going, or even rivalry going after it, that's what jealousy is. And so they do differ in how they show up. And it's very, very important that we understand those differences and can have a healthy conversation about it, because I mean, shoots, there's some rich people I'm friends with. I definitely want their wealth. But I'm not jealous of them for having it. And I'm not going to do anything to them as a result of it. It's not going to create any rifts within our relationships. And at the same time, too, believe it or not, little pockets of jealousy could be good, because we see it motivating people to even sometimes try harder for the things that they're envious for. Yes. I guess the downside of jealousy, it involves this fear, this worrisomeness, these thoughts of potential loss. And as a result of it, it creates an emotional reactivity where you're actually like anticipating or being interested in another person's things. And so because it threatens you, you start to react to that threat. Whereas with envy, I'm not going to react to that threat. And so I don't think we talk about it. And we don't talk about it because I think when we hear it, and to be honest about our feelings, we would have to directly address the underlying issues, which is inadequacies, right? Or inequalities that may exist. And sometimes when we talk about inadequacies or inequalities, it could be uncomfortable conversations because we use it in bigger frames when we talk about things like race or socioeconomic status, but we don't talk about it in terms of relationships, and it exists all the time. So I always get a client that comes to therapy usually because their friends are doing things that they aren't, right? So like I had a client recently who was like, I am really happy for my friend. They just got engaged, but what about me? Or I have my friend who just got promoted. We work in the same area. We do the same amount of work, but not me. And so you look at people's success, you look at the things that they've accomplished, and I think it's even harder when you know a person who hasn't been trying for it versus someone who has, like when you talk about the baby situation, there's somebody who, you know, they sneeze tomorrow and they're pregnant, right? Or
yeah.
who technically will struggle with infertility issues or even carrying issues.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the reason we don't have the conversations because we don't have the language for it, or the fact that we've been taught that it's such a covetous behavior that we're not having open, honest conversations. But we need to have a platform for that because things differ for people at different times. Like the saying goes, today for you, tomorrow for me. You never really know what's going to happen. But I should be able to create a space where we can have those conversations, or at least be able to say it out loud and let it go. And I think that's happening for my client is because it's like, I want to help. I've had several clients who do this. They will be in the planning stages for these people, planning the showers, help plan the proposal. And you're sitting there and you're really, really happy because that's the first emotion that will happen for genuine relationships. I'm really happy for my friend. But then the next one sets in, which is, what about me? That envy, what about me? Like, when is it going to be my turn?
Yeah.
And it's just hard. And I'm assuming we don't talk about it because we don't know what to say. We don't want somebody to think we're jealous of them. And then we sit with these emotions and then we react on them. And this is how jealousy kind of seeps in without us even thinking about it. We'll start to back away from these relationships, like you were pointing out, unknowingly because of those feelings. So it's something that, I mean, exists. It exists from the beginning of time. I'm sure there's tons of biblical stories we can go into.
Yes.
Jealousy and envy.
Well, Shakespeare, most of his plays were about jealousy and envy. Right. Macbeth, The Merchant of Venice. That was just one of the major themes in literature, history, and today. The twin heads, right? And when we learned, Dr. E, we learned in Bible days from biblical stories coming up, envy and jealousy are the green monsters, right? Green with envy, enraged with jealousy. And I think that what is interesting, like you said, is that we interchange those two, but they are slightly different, right? Like when I was reading up before the show, like you mentioned, jealousy is about relationships, right? We tend to have, you get jealous more so about people, and envy is about things. Is that accurate, or is that too small? Is that too limited, tiny a definition?
I think it's a little tiny, because when you think of jealousy, jealousy can also be rational, believe it or not. It can be rational, because when you think through why it may arise, it could be for, like, in a romantic relationship. Like, if your partner spends more time with their best friend than you, that can make you resentful, right?
Mhm.
And you're likely to be envious of the other person, right? That
Mhm.
third person who's now triangled in this relationship. So in that case, you may take the friend to receive your partner's attention and time. And as a result of that, you feel more entitled to receive more time, because they should not be on the same level as you.
Mhm.
So just as envy can arise in those relationships, jealousy too. But jealousy, on the other hand, may occur in a way where maybe you recently started spending time with one or more of your, like, coworkers, and then you notice that they're also doing the same thing with another close friend, and you become jealous. And as a result of becoming jealous, so as that person receiving more time and attention, what you then do is you start to break away from the relationships, or you start to plant bad seeds about the other person. And so I guess I think of envy as like a thought, and jealousy more as the act. So as a result of it, you're more likely to do something about it. Either act out in your behavior, act out in your words, or even act out in how you see yourself connecting in relationships in general. And so we have to just, in small doses, both of these things are perfectly natural, perfectly human, and will always exist in any type of relationship. I think what I want to point out is that, why are we talking about it? Why can't we have this healthy conversation with a friend or coworker, and it'd be more of a chop it up moment? Let me just express it, rather than, ooh, as soon as the person brings it up, ooh, what's wrong with them? That's what we do. We kind of like, oh, we need to back off. But we've all had that place. We've all been in that place in our lives where we had that moment where we were just like, man, why that can't be me? Like I have a great friend who is very much a trust fund baby, very, very much a trust fund baby, right? They don't operate like the traditional ones you would see characterized on TV, where they would be gloating all over the place, stuff like that. They're very, very humble. And I remember the first time I found out how much, like, access to wealth my friend had, and I was like, "You been what? Like, whoa!" Like, I didn't even know how. And our friendship was. I mean, some days I'd be like, "Shoot, I wish I had a trust fund too." But that doesn't stop how we operate as friends. That doesn't stop the fact that we both pay sometimes, you know what I mean, when we go out to eat, and or how we hang out. It does sometimes, when we have conversations, we have to put things in context, though, because my reality of money and her reality of money is completely different. And so, but we can joke about it. We've gotten to that comfortable place where it's like, when you're ready, if you ever want to take care of me, or, I'm even willing to get into this same-sex marriage, because this is a lot out here, and we can live off this trust fund. So, I mean, but it doesn't stop how I interact with her at all. But it's an honest conversation. And she knows it. You have more than me. And then in other terms, she'll say certain things that I have more of that she doesn't, because it's a little harder for her to have genuine friendships. It's a little harder for her to not walk in a room first, and when people hear her last name or stuff, like, associate that with just treating her differently, or even charging her more sometimes, believe it or not. So these are all things we must consider when this is happening.
Yeah.
And when I think of like the person who always sees their friends, like, and I think it's harder when you see your friend who maybe it's like I don't know how to describe it, but you see that, you know, that one friend in your friend group who really shouldn't be married, but they're the first one who get engaged and get married, and you're just like, how? Because you had your rotation like all summer. Like I've been sitting here being so proper and moral, but right there, just
And
look at it.
that's a whole thing there too, right? Like some folks have been married 3 and 4 times, while folks are trying to just get one marriage under their belt, right? You've been working at this job for 10, 15 years, and you can't get that promotion, and someone comes in 2 years later and gets the promotion. Or, you know, so there are things in areas where folks do have jealousy and envy. Before we go to break, Dr. E, one more time, like you said, just briefly pinpoint or define jealousy versus the differences between jealousy and envy in a succinct way before we go to break. So folks, because I want people to hear it, because now we're going this be getting into the root of, you know, where does that come from? Are there insecurities within yourself and all of that stuff? And what is the difference between how people react that is healthy versus an unhealthy reaction? Like you said, it's normal. Right? It's these are human emotions. What's the difference with killing Macbeth or not, right? So let's you know, it's our Othello. Did Othello kill him? Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So jealousy and envy, both are very complicated emotions, but they're also very natural emotions that exist in small doses. So when we think about it, envy describes that reaction to wanting what somebody else has. That's simply saying, like, I might be envious of someone's success, their good looks, not really, their good looks, or the fact that they have the GY that I try to get, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
On the other hand, jealousy describes an emotional reaction to feeling that someone might try to take what you feel should be yours, or the idea that you often feel or you want to covet what they have, right? You want to possess the things that they have, and as a result of it, you may sometimes act on the fact that you want what they have. So I think of in my definition of it, envy is more of a thought, whereas jealousy will turn into an action. I'm going to probably do something as a result of the things that I see and the resentment that I feel, and the fact that I feel that I need to covet what you have. So I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. E. We're talking about jealousy and envy. The whole idea of I'm happy for you, but I'm envious too, explaining the underlying emotions associated with envy and jealousy. Here with Dr. Drika Richardson. Of course, y'all know we're going to hit it deep. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM.
We believe in relationship banking. We take pride in getting to know our clients. You have access to knowledgeable, approachable ambassadors and financial coaches so that we can recommend the best product for you. At Fidelity, we care about you. From your financial health to your physical health, we can relate to you because we're just like you. Come and start your relationship banking experience with us today. Visit us online at fidelitygroup.com. Visit any of our branches in Nassau or Grand Bahama, or phone 356-7764 in Nassau, or 352-6676 for Freeport.
When I got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live. at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. That's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Joining us, Dr. Adrika Richardson. Dr. E, we are talking about jealousy and envy. Okay, so I got to tell you a story. So I was watching a service, a Sunday morning service about a week or so ago. And last week Sunday, actually, it was last week Sunday before last. Anyway, Bishop Ellis, Neil C. Ellis was doing the sermon. So I'm watching church online now, right? And so I just, it's in my timeline. I listen to Bishop Ellis, and he's talking about open doors, right? Like God sets before you your door, and this is the door that you are to walk in, only you to walk in. And he says to everyone that there is a door before you, and you're around here looking at everybody else's door, but you're not looking at your door. Walk through your door. This is not the season to be jealous. Right? This is not the season to be envious, because God has set before you an open door. Oh, right? Yeah. Oh, it was deep. It was deep. It was deep. It was like that cyber preaching was deep, boy. You should see me. If I had a rag, I'd wave it. If I had $2, I'd throw it on the altar, boy. That was deep, right? And social engagement. I even said hallelujah in text, like for no reason, just so I could be a part of the church crowd. Anyways, and then you and I were chatting maybe a week later, and this topic came up, and I thought it was so apropos, or we say serendipitous, right? That this would be the topic of conversation, that we need to have this discussion on envy and jealousy, but they are seen as it's a green, this evilness. It is seen so much as a wickedness of self, right? That it's such a twisted feeling and emotion. But what you shared, right, is that these are human emotions. It is what you do or your actions from them that may cause negative experiences, but they are very human and natural. This, to me, is one of the most powerful things, I think, for churchites like myself to hear, because it really is a condemnation of soul to be jealous or envious. We're damned to hell, really.
Yeah, and then I think when we have messages like that, what it does for most of us is that when we have a feeling, we try to brush it away. We try to pretend like it doesn't exist, because we're told that certain emotions make us seem a certain way, right? And what I'm saying is, that's fine, but we have to be honest with the fact that if you're feeling that emotion, at least say it to yourself, because pretending that it doesn't exist doesn't get rid of it. All it does is it pushes it down. And if we learn anything from early Freud, the more you bury stuff, when they eventually come to light, it's opening Pandora's box. Yeah. And so I'm saying to people that it's okay to have this normal human emotion that you've been taught your whole life should not exist. Oh, you can't feel that way. But let's think about it. The next time you see somebody, like I have several friends and several clients dealing with fertility issues right now, or dealing with the fact of they have maybe got to the point of conception, but their pregnancies aren't viable. So, it's nothing like going through that and then getting the announcement to come to somebody's shower. That feeling, I think, is like the pits, right? And it's like your whole stomach is dropping out, but you don't actually have an opportunity to sit with it, because now you have to act, because this is your really good friend and you need to show up and you need to support them when you really just want to stay under the covers or don't be a part of it, because somebody's going to ask you something. Or even thinking about, we all just passed the holidays and going home, the first questions people always like to ask, so where your person?
Yes.
What you doing? Oh, and then they attribute stuff like, well, what you doing wrong? I think we have to be so accountable for the language we use in regards to people that may even create such barriers that they don't want to be honest about how they're feeling, because we're creating unsafe spaces for them. We're not allowing them a place in which they can feel these normal human reactions to things. And so we just want to make sure that if you're having this emotion, it's not becoming damaging to you, because jealous behavior can be very, very destructive, especially within a relationship. You know that when you have jealous partners, they tend to be needy, and they also tend to be sometimes high maintenance. And so they require this like constant reassurance that no one else is a threat, that there's no other place for them.
That's an exhausting space.
Right. And if that's left unchecked, it can lead to things like distrust, controlling behavior, emotional or even physical abuse. And so it's not uncommon, we know, for jealous partners to closely like monitor their partners, like constantly requiring to know where they are, what they're doing, who they're with. And this can make you feel trapped, right? Trapped in your relationship. You push your partner away, and it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, ultimately leading to the end of the relationship, because what you're really operating on is that you've never let them know your insecurity. And because you've never let them know your insecurity, some of us allow that to turn into this jealous behavior, versus saying to them, you know what? I struggle with abandonment issues. I struggle with trust issues. Help me work on this. Help me create a vulnerable space in which we can deal with these things. So it requires trust. Dealing with both of these emotions requires trust. And so that's difficult in itself, because you never want to really look like the insecure person in the relationship. But if we deal with humans, there on some level, even the most like minute level, there is some insecurity that exists. And the more we're going to be honest about it, the better we are able to help address it and move on or move past that emotion.
Oh God, you know what, I'm hearing all of that. If you're just tuning in, Dr. Drika Richardson, we're talking about jealousy and envy, really getting to the root of these underlying issues, right? Hearing you say that, you know what I heard though is work. And I now have to help this person work through their personal stuff, right? And that, man, look here, and this is where I think I need some sort of therapy, right, Dr. E? Because after a certain, and I think this is an age thing, after a certain age, you need to deal with your own stuff, man. Like, we're getting into a relationship now, and you don't know you have these levels of insecurity, but I gotta help you get through these levels of insecurity so that you're not jealous of me not doing anything. That's a lot. All I'm hearing is work.
So this is the thing. If you are an adult, at some point you're gonna have to face yourself. Whether you do it by yourself before you get in romantic relationships, but most of us don't, because our first romantic relationships, the ones that are very intimate, are the ones that trigger us the most, that make us face the mirror of life. And unfortunately, most of us don't learn that until we lose the first romantic relationship, until we lose that one relationship that the one we built everything around. That usually becomes, for most people, the trigger that says, okay, gotta do some self-work. But if you're going to be a human and you're going to be in any type of relationship, you're going to do some work. Now, what you hope is that you create a space in which you and your partner can safely talk about this. I think that a lot of times we get in relationships and we create the idea of safety, but we actually aren't creating safe spaces where I should be able to say to you, and I'll be honest with this, I struggle with this sometimes too with my partner, but I'm getting better at it the older I get, because something comes with age too, which is you don't have no filter no more and you don't care. And so you just also don't have time to waste. So you will say things a little bit faster. You still struggle with it, but you get to a place where you say, I either have to deal with this or it's going to eat me. And if you've ever had peace in your life, you ain't letting nothing disturb that peace. So you can learn how to let those awkward words come to your mouth and say, you know what? When you did this, this is triggering that for me. And the first step, though, is understanding what some of those triggers can be. And these are some of the things that come up. Now, what I want to encourage parents to do, because parents can unknowingly create this within family dynamics between siblings, and I've seen this destroy families, because you need to make sure you aren't unconsciously, one, pitting your kids against one another. That's the first thing. Whoa. And comparing, saying like, oh, so-and-so so smart. Man, why you can't be like that? You need to study and do more stuff. Keeping in mind, you have two different kids with two different personalities, two different levels of intelligence. That's right. So it's not going to be the same way. If that was the case, then you should have slept with yourself, right? When you procreate with somebody else, you have a mixing of genetic material, which means a mixing of how those things will come out. And so as a result of it,
sleep with yourself. That was the best line. That was the best line.
You don't want to keep doing stuff like that where you say, oh, look how successful your brother is, or look how successful your sister is. Like, why you can't be more like this person? So that language adds to these feelings too as well. And it can create jealous sibling relationships unknowingly, because you're being very covetous of what your sibling has. Or you have that one sibling who don't do nothing and they just get everything. Oh my gosh. Like, look, I think we all get one of them family members. Like,
it's like that black sheep who, you know which one it was, where we kind of deride in scripture, the prodigal son.
Yeah.
And when the prodigal son comes home, daddy says, get the fatted calf. And the kid who was there the whole time is like, well, what the heck? I've been here the whole time. He didn't spend all his money. You ain't never thrown me no party. And and so that we kind of make it seem as if his reaction or his response was somehow unnatural. But at the same time, I've been pissed too. Yeah. But Michael been doing gallivanting, spent all our money, ruin our name. Look at him. I've been here toting the business for the rest of these past 10 years. And this is how there would be feelings. There would be feelings. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so one of the things when they look at the research about like jealousy, for instance, they said one of the main causes when it gets extreme is that it starts to be a result of having low self-esteem or high neuroticism, this feeling of possession of others. And so when that starts to get to this place, we want to identify what those negative feelings are as soon as possible, because they can exist on a spectrum, but the closer you get to the higher the spectrum, the worse they become. And this is where you start to see people have this kind of indifferent behavior, or somewhat, they worry about things all the time. They're easily disturbed. They have frequent mood swings, and even get labeled sometimes as narcissists because of how they're reacting. So all I'm saying is that you will have, at some level, a twinge of these emotions at some point in your life, and these are natural human emotions in very small doses. If you're sitting on them, though, not dealing with them, then that becomes the issue, because there is always somebody who you want to be mindful of, that they may be going through something at that time. And I think on the other end of it too is, if you're the person who is gaining or benefiting, right? Let's say you are that person who did just was able to conceive without blinking, right? They touch you and you're pregnant now. And you have that girlfriend who's been trying for like the last year or so. What you want to be mindful of is when you're communicating with them about your happy moments. I'm not saying to dim your light, but ask yourself, do I need to share 15 million things that Bobby did today? Because you'll be talking about the baby in utero. Or do I just need to say one or two? Because that's what you could do too as the friend on the other side of this, to make sure that you're not unknowingly kind of making your friend feel down about it. Because that happens too, right? We get so excited and we aren't conscious of what the other person is struggling with. And so we're pushing our friend away because relationships take work. We have to balance our stuff because we want to be excited, but we also have to balance what's going on in the other end for the other person. Oh, these relationships, they take lots and lots and lots and lots of work. All right, so what I want to talk about too a little bit is that let's look at it from a career standpoint. So I know we've all had it, right? Have you ever looked at somebody around your office and you just wondered, like, how did they get there? Or they just don't do as much work as you? Maybe you have that colleague who always gets recognized for doing just the one thing, but you know in the meantime they actually don't do any other work at the job. And so maybe that's kind of been affecting you and what you're doing and how you've been experiencing your job. But here's the thing we could do about that. We can have conversations and maybe even use it to leverage our credentials to ask for what we want. Because you have to start somewhere, right? And of course, not feeling trapped by those envy feelings. We want to get out of that. And maybe the first thing you do is make sure in the career standpoint, make sure you have a working relationship with your boss so that they understand how to you are meeting the company's basic needs, but also how that you can go above and beyond those expectations. Those rewards may be helpful for both of you. Excuse me, we know that those working relationships can definitely benefit. So that may be the reason why your coworker in the cubicle next to you is getting more recognition, because people know who they are. They know their names. The other thing you could do is have some open conversation and transparency. As you build that working relationship and trust and confidence builds within the system, what you could do is ask for small increments, ask for small incentives. One of my friends recently in their company asked their employees, what's on your wish list? And I thought that was such a great incentive. And because what that did was everybody wrote down something that would enhance their work life. And I'm not talking about extreme things, because you always have that one person who's like, oh, I need more vacation days, right? Or I need a bigger salary. But people were saying stuff like, I'd really like a coffee machine, right? Or I'd like a second monitor. And you think about that and you're like, okay, those are like small things that we could write off in petty cash to like enhance the person's daily working ability. So it's things like that can help. So if you make a commitment, then you want to deliver on that commitment as well too. Because when you fail to meet that commitment and be honest and forthright, what happens is that it puts you in a bad position at work, but also puts your boss in a bad position because you're not hitting those targets. So essentially, when we're talking about this from a work standpoint, we want to try to be as open and honest and create those relationships with those people who need to recognize us so that we can feel appreciated, we can be considered for things, and we can ask too. We can also set an environment where we can ask for the help we want. Now, when this comes down to emotions, I know this can kind of look completely different when we talk about romantic relationships, but we have some strategies for that too, because whether it's a romantic relationship, a familiar relationship, or a friendship, we know that feelings of jealousy and envy will hit us at certain points. Yeah. So first thing you could do is refrain from acting on your jealousy or your envy. Because the first thing we do is when we feel something, some of us have that very impulsive behavior. We feel like we got to do something about it. No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, because I'm telling you to talk about it, but what I'm saying is that many of us are in the habit of acting as we feel. We smile when we're happy, not when we're sad or irritated. Of course, sometimes we put a little light on how we feel, but even if you've dumped, let's say you just got dumped by your long-term girlfriend the night before this important job interview, it's unlikely that you're going to walk into the job interview sulking or crying, right? So what I'm saying, take that same character that you would have when you walk into a space with one of these people that you're trying to work through this emotion with yourself first. That's what I'm saying. First thing you do is work through this emotion with yourself before you act on it. And so while acting against your emotions does not come natural, because I don't want to make it sound easy, we're able to do it every so often. And what it takes from us is that it takes a time where we say to ourselves, do I need to put on my character today? Ooh. Every day you walk into your job I employ all of you. Please take your character to work, not the other version. Because what the character part of you is, that's the part that shows up and operates from that standpoint for what you need for that day.
Yeah.
While it gives you some time to sit with, process, and attempt to understand those emotions you're feeling when it comes to jealousy and envy. Does it make sense? That's our first step.
Yeah.
Then the second thing we want to do is we want to start to regain our self-confidence, because what often happens, like I said before, is that when you're jealous or even feeling a little envious, the envy sits too long, it turns into jealousy. It starts to work on our self-esteem, starts to lower our self-esteem, and it creates these insecurities. So if you don't take yourself to be worthy of your partner's friendship, or if you don't think you're worthy of your family's love and care, you will constantly seek reassurance, constantly. And so you come across as that needy person. And as we learned from our show on hyper independence, we don't really be into those needy people. Not at all. We don't be into
that show still is a word for me. That show's still too powerful. Hit me.
So if all this sounds like you're the person who needs this extra reassurance and attention, then you're probably struggling with some envy and some jealousy. So you might need to put some serious work into regaining what it is that is your self-worth, your self-confidence. Perhaps that means gaining some time by yourself to understand what that looks like. What I tell people is that may require you to first define what that is, because there are definitions out there all the time of what's high self-esteem, what's being having high self-worth. But those are their definitions. Figure out what is yours.
Oh, wait, hold on. On that point, hold that thought. Let's take a break, because I want to hold on, because I want to go right there, because that's big. That's a nugget in this discussion, determining what's your level, where you are, what is self-worth for you. Because one of the things you mentioned a lot, Dr. E, was low self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
or your self-esteem, and that being a factor, or perhaps a factor into whether you experience jealousy or envy to the point where it may be overwhelming to you.
Right.
Or is it, and I even have a question of it, is just where you're saying, okay, but what about me? Like, when is my time? Why is it so easy for person A and everything is so difficult for me? Is that some sort of law of attraction? Like, do you start to believe that you're just unlucky, or that you just can't handle seeing the success of someone else? Or there's so much to this. There's so much to this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. Adrika Richardson. We'll be back right after this.
Grand Bahama, it's time to read all about it once again, as the Nassau Guardian starts a weekly Grand Bahama news supplement each and every Tuesday starting February 8th. Learn more about advertising opportunities in the Grand Bahama News Supplement by calling Barefoot Marketing at 727-9515 or 827-4578. Grand Bahama, make sure you get your Nassau Guardian daily and grab your Grand Bahama News Supplement each Tuesday to keep up with all the latest Grand Bahama news.
Burger King Nassau is taking spice to new heights with the new Baja Whopper and Baja Crispy Chicken sandwiches. Enjoy your choice of a flame-grilled Whopper or a crispy chicken filet topped with chipotle sauce, guacamole, jalapenos, cheese, lettuce, and tomato, all on a fresh potato bun. The new Baja sandwiches at Burger King Nassau pack plenty of flavor, and with an ice-cold Pepsi and fries or onion rings, it's the perfect way to fill your day. The Baja Whopper and Baja Crispy Chicken sandwich are only available at Burger King Nassau, where taste is king.
Loss of family members is very isolating, and people who have experienced loss appreciate when others have shared their grief. If you can't be there in person, go to the Nassau Guardian's website online at thenassauguardian.com and visit our obituary link. The Nassau Guardian's interactive obituary link allows you to read the funeral announcement, express condolences, or place photos on the online guest book for 1 full year. Losing a loved one is painful, but that pain isn't the worst thing to happen. Friends, loved ones, colleagues, and neighbors who ignore the loss compound the pain. Should the bereaved family wish to place the obituary and photos on our obituary site, just contact the Guardian's funeral industry partners or the Nassau Guardian. Remember, There isn't one magic right thing to say to someone experiencing loss that will make the loss less painful or easier to bear. The Nassau Guardian's obituary link, available online at thenassauguardian.com.
Are you interested in the Bahamian economy? How about tips to improve your financial literacy? Tune in to Guardian Radio's newest financial podcast series, C-File Talks. The podcast will provide listeners with their weekly dose of economic issues and solutions and the keys to financial freedom. C-File Talks will be hosted by an array of finance experts here to give honest and beneficial advice. You won't want to miss the C-File Talks podcast series, Monday evenings from 6:30 to 7 p.m. here on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
Track and field is the queen of the Olympic Games.
In its 7th season, Track World with Alpheus Phillipson, the only radio show in the Bahamas and one of the few in the world dedicated to our beloved sport, continues to promote the athletes, coaches, officials, leadership, and the partners who make a difference in our sport.
We encourage you to tune in to Track World on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM each Tuesday evening on cable channel 969, on Guardian Radio's website www.guardiantalkradio.com, or streaming live on Facebook at 6:30 and be dazzled.
Concerned about your health? Have a health question that you're curious about? Ask the doctor. The doctor is in with me, Dr. Denothra Archer Cartwright. We're talking health, wellness, and all things that pertain to the Bahamian society and the health of the nation. Tune in Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. The doctor is in on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
Hi, I'm Amanda Coulson. I'm your host on the NAGB's Blank Canvas, the show in which we speak about visual culture and creative community. Blank Canvas airs every Wednesday night at 6:30 on Guardian Talk Radio 96.9. On Blank Canvas, we meet cultural practitioners from the creative community here in Nassau, Bahamas, and also internationally. Bahamians from all around the world doing amazing things in the cultural scene. Tune in to NAGB's Blank Canvas to hear about what's happening at your institution and around the Bahamas. Every Wednesday night at 6:30 on Guardian Talk Radio 96.9.
There comes a time when the game tolerates no spectators, only players. There comes a time when we must recognize that our individual aspirations shape our collective destiny. There comes a time when getting in the game, despite the risks, despite the challenges, regardless of the cost, is simply the right thing to do. There comes a time when we must find our hearts, find our soul, and pursue our purpose for the greater good of all, for country, for humanity. There comes a time when we must manifest our true greatness. Yes, there comes a time, and that time is now. So let's get down to the essentials. The essentials. Serious radio for serious people committed to advancing the national conversation.
The Essentials with Hubert Edwards, Thursday nights live at 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Guardian Radio 96.9.
This is your host, Valentino Brown, inside the inner city. Join us as we continue to tell our stories, challenges, talk about the history, and share our hopes and dreams. Tune into Inside the Inner City on Fridays at 6:30 p.m. on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. And remember, the place in which I fit will not exist until I make it.
Hey, I'm Tate. And I'm Dawn. We talk about current events, issues of national importance, and basically anything interesting.
Me, like who born in the 60s, right? From I hear the people talk and they sound like us, they used to be Bahamian.
And you're suggesting that if you don't have family rooted in a family island, then you're not really Bahamian.
Still your weekly dose of something different.
Right. And basically, every 5 years, we sell a different dream. We're 5 years away from a better country.
The Eye Opener, Saturdays at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. only on Guardian Radio 96.9.
Talking about a revolution. No, this is not a game.
A bold new era calls for a new mindset, fresh ideas, and a renewed commitment to innovation. Join us for University Drive and the path to progress. Enter the conversations about higher learning. Follow the shapers and drivers of change. We're shining a light on matters that impact you, your community, and the world. Travel the road of progress with us. University Drive, a University of the Bahamas talk show airing on Saturdays at 11 a.m. right here on Guardian Talk Radio 96.9 FM. Join us.
Tune into Candid, where we have real talks with real people. With your hosts, Anise Bell and Shanae Forbes, we present real issues within the country for the youth and by the youth. We talk about anything from politics, relationships, the economy, and so much more. Don't forget to tune in weekly on Guardian 96.9. See you soon and keep it real, Bahamas.
Tune in to Candid, Saturdays at noon, here on Guardian Radio 96.9.
Do you know you can get your business cards designed and printed for as low as 18 cents a card? If it's a poster you want, you can pay as little as $6 a square foot. If your print needs are short or long run, digital printing, wide format, or print consultation, call the best. Call Print Masters. Print Masters' goal is to provide its clients with the highest level of personal, professional service at an affordable price. Our state-of-the-art technology also makes working together efficient and easy. Laminations, business cards, flyers, posters, window and floor decals are just a few of the digitized print services offered at Print Masters. Call 302-2361, 302-2361, or visit us at the Nassau Guardian Building in Oaksfield. Print with the best. Print with Print Masters.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Joined here by none other than Dr. Idrika Richardson. Dr. E, man, we're hitting on a deep topic today. Envy and jealousy. And we were talking right before the break on recognizing it, right?
Yes.
Recognizing when you're jealous and how to address it.
Mm-hmm.
And you were on point 2, but you're talking about, and I think your point 2, if you could start there, because I want to jump off from a point in your point 2, but what was the second point?
It's that the first step was after you refrain from acting on that jealousy or envy, then you want to start to regain your self-confidence. And what I was saying is that a lot of people who operate or act on their jealousy usually goes hand in hand with having low self-esteem. And so self-esteem creates those insecurities where you need that constant reassurance. And so what we have to understand is that we get to define for ourselves first, even if we've read all the information, been to the therapist, we need to define for ourselves, what does it mean to have self-esteem in general? What does it mean when I say I am worthy? That definition, I am worthy. And so when we talk about self-esteem and we're talking about this confidence, this value as a human in feeling that you're resourceful, feeling that you have a positive factor in life. It's usually correlated a lot of times with having healthy, good relationships, higher ability to communicate with others, higher self-satisfaction, and just achievements. And so when you think about it, people who are going to operate on jealousy don't feel good because they're operating on that covetous, resentful, I want what you have behavior. And as a result of it, they aren't thinking through things, and so they're coming off in a way that they feel very entitled. That's the complete opposite from someone who's operating with high self-worth, high self-confidence, high self-esteem.
No, you know what? I like that you said that, because that was something I was going to say. So there are some folks who may not even recognize that they're operating in that space, that they are jealous. They just feel angry. They might not even recognize that they feel entitled. I think that there are folks who just wake up every day kind of resentful, kind of angry about stuff. I mean, how do you... I'm curious because you see it a lot, hear it a lot, and I'm curious as to how do people become aware? How does someone become aware? Like what normally triggers awareness in this area for someone who may have been living this and doesn't even realize, maybe from childhood, just learning that as a trait or something?
I think, like I said, I think the typical thing that usually triggers it first is having that first very intimate relationship. An intimate relationship, romantic or sometimes even familial. And because those could be just as intimate, where you're sharing everything with family members or that whoever's your person, right? We identify that person as the person who we're close to, we can share and open up to. So that is usually when you start to see this happening. And maybe we get into a fight with our best friend that we just can't seem to get out. We keep having the same fight over and over. And that's one way it usually shows up. Maybe it's the fact that you and your favorite coworker, they got promoted, you didn't. And so you start to feel differently towards them. You don't share as much, you start to withdraw. That's another way it can show up. It could also show up in the fact that maybe you're in a romantic relationship and you start to see yourself kind of emotionally pulled back, right? You're not really being your full self with them. I think the number one way it shows up in some form of a relationship and you're operating differently, and you need to then step back and question, why am I behaving this way? That's always the first thing you do. Why am I behaving this way? Not why are they doing this to me, because that attitude puts it on somebody else and makes it their responsibility for you. And that's not how it is.
You know, but and as we're talking about this jealousy and envy, really trying to recognize and address it in our lives. There is this thing, of course, where we know, Dr. E, in relationships, this is a big issue in country. And I want to hit it from that point as well. As before you get on to step 3, actually, no, let's finish these points, because I want to ask, on the relationship side, because some part of us thinks that jealousy in relationship is okay. It's kind of cute. Oh, he's cute.
So he don't want. The last point was we got to work on our narcissistic tendencies. Narcissistic tendencies and having a narcissistic personality disorder is 2 different things. Okay, we all have a little level of narcissistic tendencies, which is we want some things to be about us, right? Now, if you live in that world, that is a whole different thing. So whereas being prone to jealousy is tied to low self-esteem, a tendency toward envy is usually tied to a little bit of narcissism. And the higher levels of narcissism, the more entitled you feel to have that attention and have that admiration from people around you. So if a narcissist doesn't get the attention, we know that they believe that they deserve, then they are highly prone to react in a very rageous behavior to cover the envy. That's what they tend to do. The rage is a result to cover the envy. So the envy beneath their rage is one of what we call a narcissistic injury. And that is an injury that signals that the narcissist feels deeply uncomfortable and when they don't get their full attention and admiration of others. And so that expression of rage in response to that injury is what we call narcissistic rage. And so what happens is most people, we have that little tendency, like every now and then, we want the spotlight on us, but we don't live with the need to always have the spotlight on us. That's a true narcissist. But what you want to be careful of is that when you see that tendency kind of elevated, where you need more and more of that admiration, you need more and more of that attention, ask yourself, am I operating on some narcissistic tendencies at this moment? And if I am, I need to be careful with that because it can turn into what we call the narcissistic injury, which is you operate in a very rageful manner. And that narcissistic rage becomes that full-fledged emotional reaction. And that is not healthy for any of us. Not at all. Because what it's doing is that it helps us get to this place where we're not actually cut. We're not having conversations about it. We're operating out of fear. And it actually is creating a disconnect in more of our relationships than we realize. So, again, very, very distinct emotions, but very, very common that they happen, and that it's very
jealousy and narcissism. Those two, jealousy and narcissism are the common. They work together.
And envy. So jealous
yeah.
people tend to have low self-esteem. Envious people tend to have narcissistic tendencies. Yes, and so again, a tendency is not a bad thing, but a tendency unmanaged, untreated, unacknowledged will result in an injury, some type of emotional injury, and usually we call it a narcissistic injury because it turns into narcissistic rage.
Good God, this is deep. I feel like I'm in one of your lectures. I'm just so in awe. I'm taking notes. I'm literally taking notes. This is interesting. Okay, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. E. And so we're talking about the difference. We're learning about jealousy and envy, how to recognize jealousy and addressing it in your life. Envy and learning jealousy and envy are, they're like first cousins or sisters somehow. Say again?
That's a very good way to put it. They are very much, yeah.
Yeah, they're related, right? They're very related. They kind of are intertwined in a way. And hence why we find ourselves kind of, when we speak of one, we think of both kind of come together.
Yes.
So now, because what you shared is pretty deep, right? That we have to, it can lead to narcissistic rage. What do you call it? Narcissistic tendencies. And it's untreated.
Rage, right. So envy is associated with this idea when we sit on it too long and we don't acknowledge it, we don't let the emotion happen, it leads us to having narcissistic tendencies, which means we want more admiration, we want more attention, and when that need doesn't get met, we want more of it. So it increases the behavior, which leads to that narcissistic injury, which results in rage. So we just call it a narcissistic rage because you become this person that, like, it's just like the spotlight always has to be on you. It's like you're never getting filled up enough. And so when your partner says something to you like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with so-and-so, that this whole kind of resentful behavior starts to seep in unknowingly. And the first time, okay, no big deal. But now it's over and over and over again. And so you start operating in that rage. And you react in a way that, nobody's going to want to really be around you. Like, nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. And so let me answer the question you said right before I got to that last one, which is jealousy one of those things that could be a good thing, right?
Right.
Because a little bit of any of these are not bad at all. Because we like to associate human emotions with good and bad. And honestly, human emotions go on a spectrum that we can't always say good or bad. We could say healthy and sometimes unhealthy, right?
Got it.
And when it comes to jealousy, is that jealousy at times actually can be a very, very healthy emotion in small doses, okay? Not living there in very small doses. And if you're a person who is very impulsive and extreme with things, then the same for you. But if you can understand how to have something in small doses, then this can actually be a healthy thing for you. So sometimes what we see is that we've all been there, right? We hear about something great happening to somebody else. And it usually follows some type of, you have some benevolent feelings for our friend's big news. Like you're happy, but not really happy for them. So again, what you do after you hear that good news is why it can invoke a good thing for you. Maybe it motivates you. Maybe it sets you a course where you do some self-reflection, some self-planning. Maybe it allows you to talk to your partner a little bit more about why you're feeling a way about them hanging out with so and so, or why you want to be around them more. So that's what I'm saying. It could be a good thing. It can create healthy conversations.
Got it.
Healthy conversations even with yourself. Now, it can help us achieve our goals. And the other thing, though, is that if you notice that it's not developing a higher sense of awareness, then that's when it becomes a problem.
Then you just stay in that rage, because of course we know about relationships where, I mean, jealousy, as you've mentioned, has become controlling, right? You know, I need to see, and it is, I gather it's from a lot of mistrust, distrust that is personal, where you just can't. So now you need to control that person's behavior or movement, so that level of control, you have that, you know what's going on.
Right. That feeling of uncertainty. Hopefully too, when you notice that it's not shaking, because you had asked that before too, if you notice this thing shaking for you at all, this is when you really need to seek some professional help about it. Because some of us wait too long until something becomes so explosive that then we want to address it. Like I can think of a couple I had over the last few months, and they've been in a marriage for a while, and what's been happening is that the partner, one person was feeling neglected within the relationship, and of course, they stepped out. Not saying that's okay behavior, but they were working through that. But here's where the jealousy then comes up: is that they now constantly their mistrust is built to a place where the person can't do anything without needing all of the information of everything. I'm talking about going to work. I'm talking about going to the grocery store. I am talking about to the place where their partner was just being promoted, and the only thing they could think of, well, what about me? And it's like they cannot think beyond themselves. And this shows up so often. When we're hurt, we operate in that hurt behavior because we don't want to address it. And now it's to a place where it's creating such a disconnect within the marriage that if it doesn't get attended to, the partner is willing to leave. I mean, we see it all the time with our coworkers at work, right? We're doing the same things with what we assume they're doing, or we see the person who doesn't do as much in our perceived view, and then they get the promotion, but that's the person you go out with every Friday night for happy hour. And so then you start to look at them a little differently. And so we really, really, really have to address this. We have to have conversation about it. We got to talk about the fact that mothers do adore one child over the other, or fathers adore one over the other. And if that is the feeling for you, you also want to separate the person, because I've seen this with sibling rivalries, right? Where your mother adores your sister, but not you. And you deserve that admiration more than your sister does, because you're probably the one who's still at home, making sure that your parents are taken care of. But the only person they ask about all the time is, well, where's Susie? Susie coming by today? And you sitting there like, hello, I'm the one.
What about me?
Sleep, the bills paid for in this house. And so you then become envious of your sister. And so in contrast, you're afraid at the same time of losing your parents' emotions, that what you do is that you don't address it with your parents, you start to resent your sister. And as a result of that, you think that will obtain your mother's affection. That won't. So then you start to you let that sit and fester, and it turns into jealousy of your sister. And so it's hard enough to deal with the envy of it, but now adding the jealousy with the envy, oh, that's a whole nother level. So we must make sure that we're tackling those nefarious emotions in our lives, that they exist, that they're natural, and we need to talk about them. And if you can't talk about them with somebody else or writing it in your journal, come talk to a professional about it, because the problem I think that leads to sometimes even some violent behavior we see by individuals is that we're covering up natural human emotions. We're pretending that they don't exist, and then we operate on those. And so what I want, like I said earlier, what I want parents to be mindful of is that the things that you say, the little seeds that you plant can really do trauma to your children and create unnecessary sibling rivalries. Every child is very unique. And so you have to let that be. I mean, and I think our parents are from a generation where they say some things.
They say some things.
Okay. That is just,
it hits your soul different. It hits your soul different.
It touches your core. And you just, parents, y'all, it's we're in a day and age now where I need y'all to, I know you might not have the emotional capacity growing up because your parents definitely didn't give it to you, but I need y'all to learn. I just be willing to learn. Let me say that. Be willing to learn that you can work on some stuff.
All of these broken adults would be mended if we could just, as parents, do the groundwork.
So, I just think that I remember this when I was having the conversation with this client recently. I was like, geez, this really happens a lot. Like, we really get into these places where we really want to be happy for somebody else, but you're sitting there the whole time just thinking, why not me? And nobody wants to have that conversation of why not me. And I wanted us to have this one today so that we could be honest about the fact that this is a very, very natural human emotion. I'm not sitting there jealous of you. I have a little envy because, I would like a few extra zeros on my bank account. I would like the pregnant belly and the whole experience too, and the partner and all that stuff. But it's not happening for me just yet. And I just feel a little envy. That's it. I just feel a little envy. I don't want to be you. I just feel a little envy.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. Okay, we're gonna take a break. Okay. Let's take a quick break, Eddie, because that's a big point of the question. I think the question is always a good question. The why not me question isn't a bad question. Mm-hmm. It is a good question. But then the next question after that is, what do I need to do to experience that level of success? Or what happens if that doesn't happen for me? What options am I going to live in or get my mind to if, unfortunately, I'm unable to conceive, my husband and I, or I'm 45 and I'm not married yet, and my clock is beyond ticking, and I want kids, like the battery's about to dry out on the clock, right? What?
Or like my doctor said, don't let those eggs scramble on you.
The pressure mounts, right? The pressure mounts. Why can't I find someone? Why am I alone? Married and been married 4 times, God. What's going on, right? Or the fella saying, man, listen, man, why I can't find a good woman? Why these fellas, blah, blah, blah. So those are good. I think the question of, why not me should be the start. That first question, that's an acknowledgement or hopefully a recognition. Hey,
yes,
I'm feeling some sort of way about this. Yes. And that's okay. But then you get to the next point of, I'm feeling some sort of way. Why? And now what? Like the why not me for me is pity. That's like self-pity. Like that's why. And for me, that's how, when I ask myself that question, I'm like, Nahaja, are you pitying? What are you doing right now? Why not you? Go ahead.
Okay, but I was going to say, why do you consider that to be self-pity, or is that what I'm saying, which is acknowledging just how you feel at that time? I would call it pity if you sit with that and you aren't doing anything with it. Yeah. But if you're first just having it, that emotion,
that's fine.
I don't think you get to say self-pity just yet.
Yeah, right. I agree with you. It's the sitting with it, right? It's the sitting with it and not doing any, why not me? Why me? Why me? Or why not me? Right. Sitting in it, marinating in it, getting all tenderized by it. And
you're the real conk then.
Yeah. You're the real conk. Scorched, dried, you the conk. And I think at some point then you say, okay, but why not me? What am I not doing? What can I do more of? How can I reshape? Or is this for me? Because I've had those questions. Then is this thing that I want, is that for me? Or is it not for me? Because I've grown and learned what's for me is for me. I don't believe in scarcity.
Right.
I do not believe in scarcity. I believe that what is mine and what is yours is yours. Exactly. What is my season today is maybe your season. Your season is for your fruit and for your seed for when it comes. And so I think that has helped me to not, I've had those moments, mind you.
And see, it's all normal. It's all natural. And like I said, I have them too, because some people like to think, I don't know, us therapists must have superhuman capabilities, that we don't feel things, that we don't go through things. Yet, probably very real, we're very emotional people. We're just a little bit more empathic, and we're trained a little better in how to deal with human emotion. But we go through it too, and we can talk about, I don't know how close we are to break, but there are a few strategies we can do to working on this, because what we want to do is first acknowledge that this is very natural, it's happened, and how do we go from there once this starts for us? Because what we tend to do is we pass it along, right? Oh, I can't feel this. Or if I feel this too long, then something wrong with me, right? Well, guess what? That's the acknowledgement. Something is happening for you, and we don't want to sweep it under the rug. We sweep too many things in our lives under the rugs, and then we wonder why all of a sudden we walking around carrying more weight than that's on our bodies.
Yeah.
That's the emotional weight.
That's a powerful thing. Okay, we take a break. When we come back, more with Dr. E. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Hot topic today, recognizing, right? I'm happy for you, but I'm envious too. Exploring the underlying emotions of envy and jealousy with Dr. Edrika Richardson. We will be back right after this.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
When I had got prostate cancer, my family didn't know if I was going to live. At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, within days, I got an appointment. They presented me with treatment options, and we set up a robotic prostatectomy. When my scans came back, there are no signs of cancer. They don't see you as a number, they see you as a part of the family. I'm going on with my life. That's a real gift.
Call us at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Joining me, Dr. Edrika Richardson. We're talking about envy and jealousy, recognizing them and exploring the underpinning emotions that are about. But one of the big things and takeaways for me is at this point, these are natural emotions. They are not a deficit of your humanity that you experience them. They are not a condemnation to your soul. We all have moments of envy and jealousy. It is what happens when they go untreated, and that leads to to behavior that's go ahead.
Because I can remember going to services growing up, church services growing up, and they just talk about it in such a do not be covetous of the other person, and if this emotion ever sets in with you, something is wrong with you. And I think that's what a lot of us have gotten our whole lives, that if we feel a certain thing, then put it away somewhere. Don't do anything with it.
Right. We don't name it. We wouldn't name it in our lives. We don't name it and say, Jesus, I'm jealous. Or holy crap, we don't name them. I've never heard anyone, Dr. E, say, man, well, when we do it, perhaps no, I've heard people say in jest, oh, I'm jealous of you, right? You hear that. But then, when I hear it, I'm like, do they meet? Like, you try to figure out, okay, is that in jest? Do they even understand what they're saying? And is this jealousy a bad thing? Should I be wary of you now? Should I like? Because that's how it is. But go ahead. Sorry, because we don't. I feel like we don't name it in our lives.
We don't name it because a lot of us have never sat and questioned the narratives we've gotten growing up about how things are or how things should be. And I think when we do shows like this, what it helps from the feedback you and I have gotten from the shows is that it allows people to sit and question some of those messages they got growing up and realize that some of the stuff we were told just don't make no sense. And I also think some of the messages got confuddled too with our own stuff, because I've heard younger ministers and some seasoned ones too will even say, don't miss the message, right? I'm making this point, but don't miss the message behind it. But we get so caught up into the gimmicks of everything that we don't actually hear the message. And I think if I give them credit for what they were trying to say back in the day, is that don't sit in this feeling of being envious or jealous. We don't need no Cain and Abel situations. We don't need no prodigal son situations. We can work through all of these because our needs are going to be met, especially if you're a believer, right? That's what they used to be trying to say.
Yeah.
But I think we got caught up in, you just can't have it. You just don't feel that emotion. That's not.
That's right. That's the takeaway.
Right. So we need to make sure we're listening to the whole story and not just taking a part of a message. Even today, when we're having this conversation, I am saying to everybody, we all at some points feel a little envious of others, but we don't want it to turn into jealousy. And if you feel that you're operating or living with a spirit of jealousy, then you need to work on it before it turns into something that creates low self-esteem. It starts to decrease your self-worth. And as a result of it, you operate and you stay in relationships much longer than you should, or you destroy every relationship in your pathway because you aren't dealing with it. We're all at different places in lives. Because, hey, the saying goes, today for you, tomorrow for me, right? Which means that you might be envious of this person today, but tomorrow you may receive the same thing. So just acknowledge that that's the feeling and ask yourself, are you working towards it? So let's talk about these strategies. So I'll just give you 3 strategies that can help with this. So the first one is, before jumping to the conclusion that something is wrong with you, because that's the first thing we do, we start to jump to the conclusion that something is wrong with you, that you want to acknowledge first, have you assessed your own behaviors? So the first thing you will need to do is assess your own behaviors first. Start to take a closer look at yourself. Do you have, are you doing things that maybe flirtatious behavior? So it's creating jealousy for your partner, or are you putting yourself in positions where you can't, people who are attracted to you thinking you want everybody else too, right? So you're pushing the thing away that you say that you want. Do you get a sense of thrill from seeking others to respond to you in a way that, some people get, I want to say, turned on or riled up when they can make their partner jealous. Like, that is, anyway, that's a whole nother show.
That's the next level of Freaky Friday. Because that is, what is, that's a whole other show, child. Like, oh, he's jealous. Oh, look at me.
Yes. So
mental health issues, buddy.
That's a whole nother set of issues. So once you assess your behaviors, what you're doing with that is that you're acknowledging what's going on. You want to make sure you're using your natural charm for good and not for evil. And so if you get this thrill out of it, the question then is that this could be turning into something hazardous. So the first thing we're doing, the first strategy we're having when we're trying to respond and unfold these feelings of envy and jealousy is we want to assess our own behaviors first. First thing we're doing. Second thing is you want to talk to your partner, your friend, or your family member. Second thing, so simple, right? But we don't like to have no conversations. We got to pretend things it's just
everything I read.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are scrutinizing your own behavior, you can truly say that you're not provoking the outburst of envy or jealousy from your partner, your friends. But if you can talk and address it with them, how you're acting, how you're reacting to them, initiating a conversation for you both, where you're both calm and able to listen, can also promote healthy communication in the relationship. So that's what you want to do. You want to talk to them about it. Then the last thing you got to do is you need to set your boundaries. Set your boundaries. If you got to set your boundaries with your romantic partner, your friend, or your relative, that gives you an intense feeling where that you're not going crazy, right? And the crazy things that you do, maybe you're a person who sends those detailed, very hazardous text messages. You know, some of us get trigger fingers. So
fingers.
We want
late night texts.
We want to assume that you're an adult. So such behaviors present an invasion of privacy, or they cannot be tolerated. So what you want to make sure you're doing is that you're setting a boundary that says that I'm not going to do these things, and if I see myself operating this way, then here's my acknowledgement that something is going wrong, and I need to go back to steps 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so one of the things we just have to make
And what was step 1 again, Eddie? Dr. Edrika Richardson joining us.
So
What's step 1 again?
The first step is that we have to assess our own behavior. That's the first thing. We always have to assess our own behavior first.
Then emotional intelligence.
And then we got to set our boundaries.
There's a lot of emotional intelligence required for this conversation. There's a lot. Thank God we do these shows.
But you know what? I know with people listening to the shows, as they have been doing, that all of their emotional intelligence has increased over the years. So I suspect that our culture, our country is healing and becoming more emotionally healthy, communicative adults as we speak.
Yes, I'm with you. Totally there.
I'm putting that out there. That is my magic.
Hallelujah. The prayer has gone out into the atmosphere. We are more emotionally intelligent, communicative adults. Say communicative. You can show off here. Big word day.
We need to make sure that we're acknowledging it. We're going to make sure we're working on it. We need to make sure that we just function.
Yeah, that's big. That's big. Okay, we're talking about, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Edrika Richardson. We're talking about jealousy and envy, being happy for someone, but at the same time feeling envious or feeling jealous of their success or their whatever's going on. You're just feeling some sort of way about their relationships with others or your lack of ability to have relationships with others. There's some folks who, that's a whole thing where some people are like, you can just make all the kind of friends and you're supposed to be my one friend. I only have you as my friend. And that, you know, all of these other friends you have, you cheating on me with friends. Like, calm down, Willis. Just
jealous.
Take 2 steps back.
It's a serious thing. It could be such a poison for a lot of relationships. I can think of like good friends who have recognized this. Look, I've even been in situations where I had to let some people go. I'm like, look, you look possessive. You're in my mind. You look extra possessive. Like, hold on.
This ain't it.
Right. Rile that back. And so if you have a friend and you can't have any other friends besides that one friend, something is very wrong and hazardous in that relationship. And y'all probably really need to have a conversation about that. Like, that. So what I tend to find is that when you have jealous friends, when it comes to it, they are often the people who believe that their perspective is the only perspective that exists. They tend to start to belittle you. You'll even start to see them criticize you or your other friends more often than not. And so what you want to make sure is that you aren't overlooking those little comments. They'll have petty little comments too. And that is sometimes when you have to say to yourself, let me try to address this with the person. And after you address it, if nothing happens, then maybe this is the boundary I need to set. This person can't be in my life.
Yeah. But what happens when it's a friend that's a lifelong friend, right? And like now you're growing or whatnot, and or evolving, and that evolution of yourself. I don't know if it's seen as a threat.
Look, I had a post up about this recently, and here's the theme what we have. We taken into 2022 with us very clear. We're still early into this year. There is no room for unsupported friendships, family, or fake love in 2022. None.
Hey, no room.
There is no room. Here. Look, my generation has dealt with depressions, COVID, hurricane. We over it. Okay.
Listen.
like 2022.
We got it.
So
got it.
I don't care if I know you from I came out of the womb. If you're not serving me, and again, I come out of the womb, so the first person I see is my mommy. So if if you're not serving me in 2022, you gotta go.
But is it selfish? Because that's the thing too, where we feel as if we're somewhat obligated to long last. So this is one of the concerns. Obviously now, when things change, when relationships change, I've come to the place where I say, okay, I notice you're changing.
Right.
Why? What you're changing toward me? Why is this happening? Tell me so I can understand, right? So I can begin to understand what's going on.
Okay.
Okay. If I say, all right, but now let's say, okay, but you're upset or you're changing towards me because I'm growing. We have a problem because I can't stop growing so that you can be comfortable.
Right.
So now all I can do is maybe give you more time, but I'm not going to give you more time if at the same time with you is not fulfilling for me. Is that selfish? I feel like that's selfish.
No, I think every relationship should have an expiration time period. Meaning
What a
that
time.
if I've acknowledged it with you, right? And we've had a conversation, because that's what we do. We do in steps 1 and 2. I assess it, and then I'm acknowledging it, and I'm talking to you. This is step 2.
Yeah.
And after that, you're not doing anything about it. Look, I'll draft my mommy out. And I mean that very sincerely and very loving.
Eddie, what you do? You draft your mommy.
I draft the birth probably into this world, so you can think anybody else. Nobody.
You do a little white paper, mommy. I just want you to know, it's been great. It's been great, but that's season over.
Because I mean, you have some people in your lives who are just not growing, who are not willing to acknowledge things, who are not honest about things, who are literally dragging you down. And I'm telling you, I have gotten to a place in my life, and I want this for everybody, that I have a certain level of peace. And let me tell you, I will cut anybody off to maintain that. Okay? I'm trying to increase it from here. I'm not trying to decrease it. And what someone who's living with the spirit of jealousy does is that they will keep acting on that behavior. They don't want to grow and change. They don't even, when we have the conversation, they will make you think that you made all of this up in your mind. And let me tell you, you did not make it all up in your mind. You're not delusional. So if the person has been with you since inception, but they are not changing and growing or wanting to work on it, you got to let them go. Okay? I actually know some clients whose parents are jealous of them. Like they are legitimately jealous of their child.
How? Why? How is that possible? No, seriously. How is that possible? Give me an example.
I have one parent dynamic where they're jealous of the child because the spouse is spending more time with the child and trying to help them more. So it's a sense of jealousy because you're taking away from what I want.
Oh, that's a lot of mental help the parent needs. The parent needs therapy. I hope you're doing some therapy with the parent, because they go through stuff.
Seriously, and I think when I said that to my client, I said, do you think this is possible? Because here's what we say. Another client I can think about, we were having a conversation about their level of success, right? So they opened a business, it's doing very well. They come from a family it's pretty well put together, and their friend just has made these low-key comments, because when we talked about it, I was like, I said, do you hear that? And the client was like, no. I was like, I don't know how to say this to you, but your friend sounds jealous. And we never want to think that our friends can be jealous of us.
Yeah.
But it's very, very possible.
Yeah.
So while I said to the client, just pay a little bit more attention to these things.
Yeah.
And then they came back and they were like, you right. And I was like, yeah, because what we never want to acknowledge is that we kind of dismiss it a lot in the people we love. But even the people we love have some really bad behaviors that we need to address and go back to step 3 and set some boundaries with them. Let them know that these are the things that we're not okay with anymore.
This is good stuff. Dr. Adrika Richardson joining us on the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We'll take a quick break. When we come up, let's wrap up with the final segment with Dr. E, where now, okay, I'm noticing that my, like you said, my people or someone around me is jealous. So I have come to the realization that I have jealousy and envy, right? But now because we've touched on it, actually, this last segment, we talked about the cutoff point, right? But I want to go a little deeper into that cutoff point of the behavior from people and knowing, okay, this is my mental health that's important and vital. Do I need to quit this relationship being my marriage? Because I think those are hard things,
Extremely.
That's not a wake up in the morning, listen, I tired of you kind of conversation, right? Those are hard conversations to have with yourself too. And I wonder how much of it is our fault. Is it something that's my fault that's causing other people to be, angry? Can I adjust me? How far of an adjustment of me should I go before I say, okay, that's enough? And I think because I love people. I don't ever like to cut off folk. Now, stupid people, that's easy.
But
I love.
here's the question. Why
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. We can take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. Adrika Richardson here on the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM.
Throughout our lifetime, we must all make decisions. No matter how we choose, the right one just needs to be made. Like having J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers as your insurance partner. We've been serving the Bahamas for over 100 years. Whether you need home, motor, marine, or commercial insurance, make the right decision. Call 397-2100 or visit jsjohnson.com.
J.S. Johnson Insurance. Peace of mind.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. I got joining me the one and only Dr. E. We are talking about jealousy and envy. This is a very good show. Can I just say it's a very good show? All right, Eddie, as we're wrapping up the segment, what is the question that we ended with was, what is the adjustments that I would need to make if someone in my life is envious or jealous, or I am envious and jealous? When is that cutoff point for those relationships? And can I fix myself? And I mean, like, because you talked about assessing, that seemed easy. Those things sound easy, but boy, I don't know.
None of this is easy. All of these things are very natural, but what we're doing is we're now acknowledging them, and we're no longer saying that these things don't exist, and we're going to be willing to do the work. It's all started with us being willing to do the work. The way we start being willing to do the work is we got to master our mindsets. That's the first thing. We got to master our mindsets.
I love that.
So if you're struggling with how to stop being jealous or even controlling, it's likely that your mindset is holding you back. It first starts there. It's trying to understand the root causes of the jealousy and the envy, and it's looking at those thought patterns. Believe it or not, a lot of us get so overwhelmed a lot of the times just by the thoughts that ruminate over and over in our minds, and we almost think about it or acknowledge it as if they don't exist together. Like, your thoughts are in you, meaning like your thoughts aren't separated from you, and someone don't put those thoughts there, which means that you can control the thoughts that are happening in your mind. You have much more power than you realize. And so if you find yourself blaming a lot of other people for stuff, or seeing things as all or nothing, as we call it, black and white terms, and it's likely that you're living in a very imbalanced level of thinking, a very distorted view of your relationships. So you have to commit first to transforming your thinking, your thoughts, your cognitions. Those are the things that are spearheading a lot of the times then how you will behave as a result of it. And we use it a lot of times to cover up how we feel about being jealous, right? That we don't acknowledge that these feelings exist. And at the end of the day, it is, if we first control our mindset, then we can go to all the other steps. But until we control our mindset, there's nothing else we can do. Now that you've controlled that mindset and acknowledged that it exists, the first things you want to do is when you want to spot these signs as early as possible, right? You want to talk to your partner about any of the concerns, and you want to take a gentle approach. So let's say you're the person acknowledging it, somebody else. We gotta go easy. We gotta come with very inviting, very empathic language that says that I know this is something that you may be working with or struggling through, and I see it and I want to help you. That's the first thing we got to do. Then we have to establish boundaries. I know we talk about boundaries so much throughout the course of the shows, but boundaries are so important, and we cannot ignore that boundaries are necessary for all healthy relationships in life. Boundaries are the key. And what boundaries tell us is that they help us communicate how we want to be treated. They help us take into consideration what is important for us and the other person. So, for example, let's say that you wanna go over to somebody's house, and they say to you, sure, you can come over, but you can only come over after this time. Then you don't ignore the boundary and show up before they told you that it was okay. This is your window. That's just respecting it. And even if you're the closest person to them, don't ignore the boundary. Parents do this all the time. I have clients who will say, like, I'll tell my parents, here's when I'm available, but they'll call me all these other times.
Yes.
That is so, like, they just want to ignore the boundary because you're not reinforcing it too. Once you put a boundary out there, you also have to reinforce it. So now that you have talked about it, established a boundary, now you want to try to revisit the conversation sometimes several times, because what can happen is that sometimes when we have the first conversation, people get the first idea of things, but then they don't really have the true understanding. So we also want to come back to the conversation again just to make sure there's clarity. You also want to start then to focus on other things as well too, right? If you notice, like, let's say for instance that you or your partner has been doing things that maybe you don't, you've addressed with them before. We can't get hyper-focused on the things in which we told them we were going to give them a chance to correct, because we tend to do that a lot. We'll say it, and then we will start to go back over and over it again. we got to remember too that jealousy is a feeling, not a call to action. So we can't act on it. So when it creeps up, take a deep breath and remind yourself that that's a feeling. It's not the same as reality. How many of us can be honest and say that when we feel a feeling, we just go with it? That's why some of y'all send those texts last night that y'all regret. They ain't picking up the phone because that text.
But we're an impulsive bunch, eh?
And you was out of that delete window time.
Man, look, yeah. That's. Well, we're an impulsive bunch, and I wonder if it's because that we see it in how we react to certain things, right? I've had folks tell me, say, man, listen, I break up his car, or I mean, these people, all kind of stories. I got all kind of stories. I end up in jail for this woman, blah blah blah, and I'm like, guys, breathe, ladies and gents, breathe, man, breathe.
I have never been in a relationship that was just so. I don't know, maybe it's me. So let me acknowledge my privilege in life that I have never been that possessive. Like, I don't want to be, I don't know. And that might be my privilege. So let me acknowledge that, because anything that threatens me being some buddies be in jail ain't never a thing for me. Like, that just can't happen, because that ain't gonna work out well. I watch Orange is the New Black. That's not the life. That is just not the life. And quite frankly, if you've ever visited Her Majesty's, and
it's not a place to go.
Some of the people just in big t-shirts, that alone means like
Some people just in big t-shirts. That's a real thing.
One time I went, big t-shirts, meaning like you could tell they don't really get undergarments like that, because
oh God, no,
they're used to sweat. I don't know. You mix it with the stuff you're watching TV, so you kind of exaggerate the stories, but bras can be weapons. And so maybe they don't have those. Like, I literally saw people in big t-shirts, and I'm thinking, then are you getting like sexually assaulted? And see, all those thoughts go in my mind. So jail is never a thing.
No, that ain't no option for me. I'm afraid of tickets. I just don't know.
I'm eating grits at like 4:00 in the afternoon. I've been on the floor and flat. But anyway, they took us there in high school, and that image never will get out of my head. Never.
Listen, I hear they have new toilets now. Nope, that ain't true.
Oh, they flush?
No, I'm making up stories now just to make it sound good. Yeah.
I mean, they have phones and write us letters. We like the letters.
Yeah, no, we got letters. Yeah. And we know that they get cell phones and weed, but we digress. This ain't that show. So, but I think that's interesting on the point that you're making about how we can be so possessive and folks making these impulsive actions, right?
Yes.
And that tends. This is where I have my doubts, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Where when we have conversations like this, I'm hoping that these conversations lead to self-awareness.
Right.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau.